Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Program. My name is Andrew Knight, and I've been with RICS for nearly 12 years now. I sit within the knowledge and practice area of the organisation, and my role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 qualified members working worldwide, right across the property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, asset management, building operation, and end of life, and indeed working across lots of different asset types, land itself, residential, commercial, alternative, and infrastructure. Clearly, data and technology is having a huge positive effect on the way our profession works. And I'm really happy today to have Michael Joyner join me from RICS and Logic. So Michael, do join me.
Andrew.
Hi, Michael. Good to have you on the call. Now, before we get into the sort of the bits and bytes, it'd be great to hear a bit about your personal backstory and the kind of origin of RICS and Logic, if we may.
Yes. So I did a maths degree way back when in sort of mid-noughties, and then sort of quickly went into sort of data science before it was called data science. Actually, Tesco, doing operational research in their supply and demand research development team. I then sort of went over to the dark side of finance for a number of years, and then after that, I sort of got a bit tired of it. And a friend of mine had recently sort of sold a data company. We're both quite interested in property, fancy doing something a bit different, a little bit frustrated with sort of the data and what was available out there. So I embarked 4 years ago now on setting up RICS and Logic. What we here today.
So what is RICS? I mean, to sort of summarize it, I mean, I guess RICS and Logic is there about aggregating data sets, but what are you doing differently? Because there's obviously quite a few people now looking at this challenge of aggregating data. What's your particular take on this challenge?
Cool. So yeah, I guess basically RICS and Logic is a data platform, as a lot of things are, focusing on property data, and in particular, we're really focusing on price and sort of like understanding, visualizing, and communicating price. And I think the thing, as I say, 4 years ago when we started on this, what we sort of found very frustrating was there's lots of raw data out there. The property market is quite big, but actually, in reality, the property market isn't just one market; it's thousands of tiny markets. I remember just seeing things on websites being like the average house price for the district of N4 in London was up 15% year on year, and then N5 was down 22%, just because it basically take an average of the land registry sales, and data isn't big enough to be able to actually do those sorts of things. So what we're trying to do is inject a certain amount of, I guess, intelligence and learning AI, statistical analysis, take that data, give the raw data where available, but also give our take on it, interpret it. So what's our best guess of what's happening? What if N4 is averaging 15% up and N1 down 12%? What do we think the reality actually is? So yeah, so we're not only just aggregating all the raw data, we're actually trying to add a layer of sophistication.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I saw a post on one of the various, I think it might have been LinkedIn actually recently, about somebody commenting about the fact that so often people look at the UK residential property market with the word singular, and this person was saying, well, it's actually like 1,000 micro markets, that it's really actually this, yes, you can look at it eventually in aggregate, but really that's missing the kind of nuance of the fact there are all these sort of micro markets. So is that almost the approach you're looking at?
Yeah. So it actually sort of came back. I ended up using something I did at Tesco, which is cluster analysis. So we used to be looking at like if cucumbers were selling fast or slow, and how they were performing in the south of England to north of England. Now, the fact that cucumbers were selling a lot in the north of England did have some impact on the fact that they might be selling a lot in the south of England, but there obviously is lots of other differences. So the way we've tried to do it is take every single property as its own market, and we would basically go, right, well, what is this property? Let's say it's a 5-bedroom period house in Wandsworth. And we'll then be going, right, okay, well, how's Wandsworth performing? How are large houses performing? How are things with gardens performing? And aggregate all of these things up and go, well, we think this property is doing this based on all the different trends and factors. And it's even just things like, you can sort of look at, say, coming out of the financial crash last time, what you saw was central London performing very well relative to the rest of the UK. You actually saw areas like Bath, Cambridge, Oxford, Bristol, those much more traditionally expensive areas acting much more like London than they were of their immediate neighbours. So trying to take all of that sort of information together and doing it at property level then means when you can looking at a region, we'll say N4 has acted like the average of every single property within it, rather than going, okay, well, these are the sales that have happened. So yeah, that's essentially what we're trying to do, is look at everything in literally a singular way and understanding the trends.
And I suppose that's interesting, because that's probably looking at data in a way that perhaps historically the property industry wouldn't have done. That they perhaps, that's as ever the benefit of coming perhaps from outside the sector and thinking, actually, well, how would I normally look at data using the statistical approaches I have without that kind of, dare I say, assumption that, okay, this is Bristol, it's going to behave like North Somerset or Avon, whichever jurisdiction it's in, sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the challenges we've had with essentially the client base. It's, getting this concept to them, because obviously it's very easy to say, well, the average price in N4 was this, and we're not necessarily doing that. It's like, no, well, this is what we think it is, but we can't give you all the average properties. But we think our interpretation of what's happening is much more representative than just the aggregation of the raw data. So no, it's definitely been a challenge for us to sort of, there's a lot of educating and informing and that has to go on with everyone who signs up to the platform.
Now, you've used the word sort of education and informing. What kind of parts of the profession are you talking to in terms of your audience, or the sort of people that you'd like to be using the service?
So, well, we have sort of two sides. We have a sort of a customer-facing side, so Joe Public. Now, this is where we sort of started. We were a bit frustrated with the data out there. We'd bought and sold properties and stuff, and wanted more access to data. So we have a sort of free public-facing side of the platform. In terms of, we then basically built up a sort of software as a service, additional, more detailed version. And that primarily over the last year or so has been focused on estate agents, and that's sort of where we've got the most traction so far. But it quickly became obvious when we were sort of talking to other people that essentially anyone who cares about the price of property, so surveyors, obviously developers, our exchange companies, asset managers, just investors, property professionals, they've all found a use for the platform. So yeah, we've got quite a wide spectrum. We sort of say at the moment the tools have really been tailored towards estate agents, but we're now sort of branching out with the help of sort of some early adopters to build out those tools for other areas.
And in some respects, Michael, I always say that kind of, data and technology is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. What kind of problems are the people you're working with finding that this now solves? Because obviously there are other ways of looking historically at this kind of data. So what problems are you solving, do you think, for your audience?
So with the estate agents, it's very much sort of like the communication of price. Now, most estate agents have a very good idea of what the price is in their area, how it's been performing, that sort of thing. But generally, when they go out on meetings to pitch for a property or whatever, they just have to say, this is what I think, and here's my anecdotal evidence. And what they don't have is a nice tool to really back up and justify exactly why. That's particularly important if it's a slightly unique property and there's not direct comparables and all this kind of stuff. So what we've tried to do is build out this tool which allows for this simple, easy to understand, accurate, very good for communication. And yeah, the thing I guess which agents sort of really like about it is the fact that we found that property tools, especially in data and property, may have lagged behind somewhat, and the design of everything looks maybe like it was built in sort of 10, 15 years ago. And we are in this sort of like Apple millennial generation. So we tried to sort of incorporate that and actually make it, as I say, very accessible, actually look nice, because, albeit I'm quite familiar with charts and graphs and tables and all that sort of stuff, but obviously the majority of the public aren't. And yeah, what we've tried to give is estate agents a thing that they can really understand and be able to get their potential clients to understand and look in a way that makes it attractive and makes them look good. And then yes, and this has then sort of gone on to the more corporate side. So yeah, at the moment we're sort of building a bespoke report for a big asset management company that want to be able to present everything in a nice way and have this lovely independent data and all that kind of stuff.
And what was the thought process? Because I believe you sort of almost have a kind of free B2C kind of consumer model here. What was the thought process about keeping that service free in that way? Because obviously you need to monetize what you're doing in every respect.
Yeah, so there's sort of two reasons for it. One, it's a lot easier for agents to communicate to people what's going on if they're talking the same language. So there's a platform out there which the public can access independently of what the agents are using and the more professional side that is consistent with what the agents are showing them and talking in the same sort of terms. It means that they're already halfway there to understanding what the agent's presenting to them. So it's a really great way to sort of integrate the public. At the end of the day, they're the biggest consumers of all of this stuff in that journey. The second is it's basically a little cherry on the top for us for all our clients because we've got basically customers using the public facing side. They're asking, they like what they're seeing, they like this database approach, they want an agent or a surveyor or a asset manager, whatever it is, who talks in the same language that they do and so they know if they're using the agents using our platform that they will get that. So it's essentially also a lead generation. We can give data about what people are looking for, where are they looking, all of those sorts of things. So it's a double-edged sword for us, which is win-win, so to speak. So yeah, it's a way to educate the customers and actually then give that little bit of additional commercial offering to our clients.
Indeed. Now, Michael, I understand that effectively, part of what your platform now does is one of these automated valuation models, AVMs, as they're shortened to. And we've done a lot of work recently looking at AVMs, not just in the UK, but globally, and indeed how they're being used or some of the approaches that they're being used outside of perhaps the estate agency world, capital markets, looking at not only residential, as I said, but other asset types as well. What do you see as the kind of the benefits and dare I say the drawbacks of using an AVM? Because our sense is that they're great tools, but if they're misused or misinterpreted, there can be dangers there as well.
I think at the moment AVMs are used very well on the sort of macro level. So if you're valuing a portfolio, you just want to say, okay, how are the trends moving over time? I've got thousands of properties, let's value them. And the outliers then sort of get blurred and they get lost in the noise, and actually they perform very good valuation systems in those points. Where I think they fall down is on the micro level if you're only valuing one property. Because all the agents that we speak to is kind of like, AVMs, rubbish, don't care, and then completely mistrust. And essentially that's like most of the time AVMs are pretty good 8-9 times out of 10, but the problem is you don't know that 1 time out of 10. So as soon as you see one bad number, then the trust is completely lost. And so this is, I guess, what we're trying to sort of address on the platform itself. We talk about this sort of communication, this understanding, and where we have sort of an automated valuation model, we have one for every property in the UK. We give what our estimate is, and we try and give an explanation as to why we've come up with that value. So it's like, okay, you see, we'll give you a starting point. This is the value that we use, and this is how we got there. And it's kind of what we're trying to do is, I remember reading an article about AI and use of in the medical world. And I was saying I think it was retina scans they were doing, and actually the AI performed pretty much as well as the doctors did. What was really interesting was when the doctors used the AI to inform their decision making, they actually did better than either the doctors or the AI individually. And I guess this is the approach that we're trying to take. Now, the data isn't big enough, the data isn't deep enough to give an absolute brilliant valuation on every single property. What it can do is it can flag up to someone, a surveyor or an agent in the area, and go, well, actually what you find is the properties in this postcode tend to sell a little bit less than the ones over here, or the fact that this is a completely unique property, say it's a 1,200 square foot flat, 800 square foot flats sell generally like this, and we think the difference in price between these two is like this. And it's kind of giving those things to inform, and I guess, build that trust. Yes, we might not be right 100% of the time, we get pretty good, but there are going to be those occasions where the data is either poor or the data is very thin, and yeah, we can basically point people in the directions of the things that they might want to consider when making a valuation that have been drawn out from the data, and therefore it's actually.
Indeed, and I suppose that for me that highlights a couple of key points that's come out of a lot of conversations and work we've done at RICS around the fact that actually the most powerful combination is a human plus artificial intelligence.
Yep.
We've seen that from what I've read of the literature, even things that like Go. I think apparently the best Go player was actually a human being using the AI that had learned to play Go. So there's that kind of positive message, I think, about AI augmenting what people do. And I guess it's not even, I think, technically a word, but that explainability, that ability to have a model, have a valuation model, however it's used in terms of the technology inside, that does have that explainability, that ability to be interpreted, because I think, as you say, that way it can build confidence. And also it means, I think, it can be used as a tool, can't it, as an input to an overall conversation or evaluation process. Is there some way you can show what explainability looks like, rather than just, as I say, you've given us a very good explanation, but sometimes it's the visual side that can help us see what's going on under the hood, under the bonnet.
No problem. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is just just on our platform now, and yeah, so one thing I guess I want to show as well is what we're trying to do is not only take all the data that's out there, but we're trying to get the people that are on the ground, so estate agents, surveyors, to actually input data and make the platform better for everyone. So here's an example of one of the agents who's been to this property, he's valued it, he's basically updated the details and said, yes, this is what this property is. So it's a really useful tool to basically quality assurance on the data. So anyway, so here what we can see is this property, we think it's a mid-century flat. It's got a 91-year lease, 2 beds, balcony, 786 square foot. And we've given it an AVM. This is our valuation. So £436,362. So what we do here is we go into this little tool. Now, what we're doing is we're taking the sold valuations in this postcode, for example, and in this instance, we've got lots of opinions from estate agents that have sold properties around here as well, and basically saying what they think things are worth at particular points in time. And what we do is, if I click on, let's say, this property here, you can see this sold in June 21 for 523,000. Now, our property that we're looking at, this one here was slightly bigger, so it's saying that we think it's worth slightly more, so on and so forth, and basically how things have moved in time. And essentially what we do is normalize all these prices, for example, how these prices differ, the various attributes, and then you can see how they all come across on a sort of, this is a size v price area, and essentially our valuation goes through the middle. Now, so basically if there's an underlying data point here which is really dragging that line down, have a look and go, okay, right, I now see why that valuation is really off. It's because of this data point, whatever it might be. And then what we then do, we sort of talk about this idea of AI and sort of the human together. So what we've done is gone, right, okay, well, you can choose, you can drive our AVM, and you can choose particular comparable sales, and you go, okay, let's have a look. I know this property. I don't think that that's a very good comparable. Take that out. And essentially, we'll then do the hard work of how much the price have moved since it was a sale. If it's slightly smaller, if it's slightly bigger, if it's got a balcony on it, if it's got not got a balcony on it, we can normalize those to the property that you're looking at in question and give a valuation. And then from that, we can generate really nice digital reports and basically build up that sort of communication as to here. Take it through, and we can sort of build those stories up for clients, whichever the work sort of guys is, and basically show them this is how the valuation has come to. And yeah, combining those sort of underlying data, those sort of tools and visualization, we think we really add value to just being a AVM that spits out a number. Very different.
Exactly, yeah. And I suppose as you've shown us and spoken that through for us, it's that sort of interaction between, whether it's the estate agent or a valuer or a surveyor, that interaction, which I think is very powerful because it's becoming a tool for them, not a a simple black box that spits a number out that, as you say, is then very hard to decipher. And they might think, well, actually, that number looks okay, but if it doesn't look okay, they've got nowhere to go without that kind of ability to interact with the tool. So,
exactly that. Yeah, and what you generally find is, yeah, agents do have a good idea of where things are, and yeah, when we spoke to people, it's like, yeah, when something looks pretty spot on, they can say, yes, yeah, no, I knew
feels right. Yeah.
Yeah, when it doesn't, it's like, okay, let's go and look and understand why. Right, no, take that comparable out, and suddenly, yeah, that value's spot on as well. And now I can go to my client and be like, here you go, this is exactly why it's worth.
Or indeed, I guess, with something where, that kind of asset in that location has been fairly thinly traded, you simply may not have the depth of data, and so it's going to be much, much harder. As you say, those kind of edge cases, if you looked at that kind of macro, valuing an entire portfolio, the edge cases don't matter. But if you're looking at this more granular level, then you are going to bump into some edge cases where it's a very unique property, or, as you say, you simply just don't have enough comparables that are recent and genuinely comparable enough, and it's then very much down to that judgment of a valuer to look at other factors. I mean, what's been the biggest challenge from a kind of data acquisition perspective to kind of get the data you needed to build this platform?
So I guess the biggest challenge really, I guess, has been this kind of worked out fairly quickly that we needed to go down to this sort of property level way of doing things. And it sort of becomes a little bit chicken and egg of like how wide, like where do you look? Do you have to sort of, so the sort of storage, if you imagine, we've basically got an index for 27 million properties, and then this map is just an aggregation of all those, and trying to do that in a sort of a usable way. And I think that's potentially why people haven't tried this approach before, because suddenly the sort of like the UK data set goes from being, whatever the number of records in land registry are, to every property times every month times multiple ways of doing things and interacting, and then having to be able to do so. So it's much more on this, I guess, computation side to basically build this level of explainability into the system. Well, we think.
Indeed. And I suppose that to some extent, there's always a discussion, I think, when people try and define AI, and this is in no way to say that this isn't, a good definition of AI, but really it's fundamentally good statistical approaches that really kind of underpin this kind of way of doing things, isn't it?
Yeah, the way we sort of, the mantra we sort of got is like, we never want to have anything stupid on our platform. Everything should make sense. And ultimately, all AI is doing is just looking through the data for patterns and doing that through various statistical means. So by doing that, everything it comes out with should in essence make sense, because you'll be looking for patterns that, how the market's acting, what's doing, how the different things are like that. So yeah, it's a tool that just uses statistics to make sense of data. And if you are a domain expert, you're an agent, you're a surveyor, whatever it might be, developer, you know your market. And what's amazing, what's really great is when you know something and then the data and the machine is telling you the same thing, then that's when the synergies sort of happen, and you build that confidence, and you can sort of go in and you build the trust in it, because like, okay, I see it's doing that. So when it tells me something that looks slightly different, that means, okay, maybe I should just spend 10 minutes and really understand why it's telling me that. And then you suddenly might find, oh, actually, that road's selling for a bit less, because now I go and look at it, at the end of it, there's a huge eyesore, and I actually was going to do that as a complete comparable, but actually, no, I now believe that, yeah, it's that road is 5 or 10% less than the one on just.
Indeed. I guess a final thought before we wrap up, and I appreciate that I saw EPCs there, but it's hard really to talk about property values now without the kind of whole sustainability discussion. I mean, where do you see that going in terms of additional data points or additional attributes? Because I know it was a bit of a cliche during the worst of the pandemic, when it was all about spare rooms and open spaces and people's kind of, because we are talking here about human beings making a decision about what's valuable. And I guess what's interesting is to think ahead, how much more important will not just an EPC rating, but those other kind of ESG type sort of credentials will be? What are you seeing, and how are you perhaps preparing your solution by looking at other data points for that?
Yeah, so obviously the EPCs are a really great source of data for us. They obviously give a lot out, and it's very interesting. One of the challenges I've been trying to grapple with is like there's a lot of autocorrelation between when you get a highly energy efficient property, normally just in very good decorative order as well.
Yes, yeah.
So it's actually trying to strip out what is the true value of the additional energy efficiency, and the amount that it's being saved, and the amount of energy it's using, compared to it just looking great and someone wanting to live there. So yeah, it's all about trying to capture as much data as possible, and this is where we're really trying to work with our agents and surveyors to sort of put these things in. And obviously, it's a cliche, but the more data, the
Yes.
more analysis you can do. So what we're really trying to do is build this resource. So as this goes forward, we've got obviously all of the energy performance certificate data, but as well as all of this additional surveyor agent data that gives much more qualitative information about what does it look like, is it a nice open plan, and trying to strip back those individual values, which then helps us to see the trends of, okay, well, how is ESG and energy performance coming through and actually adding value to the market, and what are the trends for these more energy efficient? Are they increasing in price more or less, or whatever it might be, which then obviously becomes useful for developers and knowing how much they can invest in trying to make sure this
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the things that we're trying to do is get as much data and as good quality data as we possibly can.
I suppose that's a lesson that everybody should be taught. Correlation is not causation. There is that danger that you see two factors strongly correlated and they actually have nothing to do with each other, but there's going to be some other stuff going on. It's never that simple, is it?
I remember right at the beginning of this when it was understanding the difference in the price driver of number of bedrooms and size, and obviously the number of bedrooms, you can add a bedroom and it goes up loads, but you're like, the property's got no bigger. It's like, how much does adding a bedroom in the size, and which is the true driving factor? A long time solving that problem.
Indeed, and I suppose the interesting thing about property valuation is it's always multiple factors. That it's a combination, and they work in interrelated and sometimes disconnected way. But well, it's been fascinating to chat, Michael, and I really appreciate your time today, and look forward to catching up again soon. But for today, thanks very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Andrew.